Authority. All throughout history, there have been countless examples of people who have challenged it, whether it be pushing back against the tyrannical fist of a psychopathic dictator, or through taking the power back in a more personal way. There has always been the pendulum swing. Power is a tricky thing, and it more often than not goes awry. Yet, most surprising of all is when the powers that be use this authority to manipulate others into conforming to their agenda. This point is most succinct when looking at the story of a girl named Sylvia Likens. This story is the most heart-wrenching and horrifying story of abuse I think I've honestly ever come across. After hearing it, I wondered how it was possible that a mother could not only do the things that she did, but managed to convince others to carry out these cruel acts as well. In this video, I'll be breaking down the mind of authority, why people conform, and how it is that people will obey even when they know it is wrong. But first, let's start with Sylvia's story. This is Sylvia. Sylvia was 16 years old when, in July of 1965, her life took an unexpected turn. Her parents, Lester and Betty Likens, were traveling carnival workers, and they entrusted Sylvia and her younger sister, Jenny, to the care of Gertrude Benezuski, a 37-year-old mother of 7. Gertrude was to care for the children with an agreed-upon payment of $20 a week. This arrangement was to last from June to November of that year. Initially, things in the household were smooth sailing. Sylvia helped with chores and attended Sunday school with the Benezuski children, even earning praise from the pastor for her piety. However, after about 2 weeks, the payments from their dad were delayed, which led Gertrude to vent her frustration on the sisters. This is the moment things began to take a turn for the worst. Gertrude began beating the girls with a paddle and verbally abusing them, blaming them for the late payment. By late August, Gertrude's abuse focused mainly on Sylvia, likely driven by jealousy. Sylvia was subjected to severe beatings, forced to eat spoiled food from trash, and at one point was even accused of stealing candy she had actually purchased. The abuse became so severe that Gertrude would begin to encourage the neighborhood kids to join in. Coy Hubbard and several of his classmates regularly visited the Benezuski home to physically and verbally abuse Sylvia Likens with the help of Gertrude and her children. Encouraged by Gertrude, the children frequently assaulted Sylvia, using her as a target in violent judo practice, lacerating her body, and burning her skin with cigarettes over 100 times. After a while, Sylvia was forbidden from attending school after confessing to stealing a gym suit that Gertrude refused to purchase for her. And due to the stress on her body and mind from the frequent torture, she became incontinent. Gertrude had, at this point, denied her access to the bathroom. As punishment for her incontinence, Gertrude threw her in the basement and tied her up, where her torture only escalated. Often she was deprived of food and water, left alone and without clothes. Occasionally, she was tied to the stair railing where her feet barely touched the ground. Neighborhood kids were charged 5 cents apiece to witness and participate in Sylvia's humiliation, which included beatings, scaldings, and mutilation. Gertrude and her children would restrain Sylvia, gag her, and place her in a tub of scalding water with salt rubbed into her wounds. The severity and continual abuse only worsened from here on out. To write even more on the subject would take pages because there were so many more instances that are honestly too horrifying to mention. Near the end, Gertrude led Sylvia upstairs to the kitchen. She told her, "You have branded my daughters, now I'm going to brand you." She began carving the words, "I am a prostitute and proud of it," into Sylvia's abdomen with a heated needle. After tiring from this, she instructed one of the 14-year-old neighborhood boys, Richard Hobbs, to finish the job. This boy, who later described his etchings as short, light, continued to carve the words into Sylvia's abdomen, causing her tremendous pain. Afterward, Hobbs and the 10-year-old Shirley Benezuski took Sylvia to the basement where they used an anchor bolt to attempt to burn an S. Due to the incorrect placement of the bolt, the resulting scar resembled a backward 3. Later that night, Sylvia told her sister, "Jenny, I know you don't want me to die, but I'm going to die. I can tell it." Then, on October 26, 1965, the police were called to the East New York street house. When they arrived, they were confronted with a scene that would haunt them forever. Sylvia's body was discovered on a soiled mattress in an empty upstairs room, bearing the marks of unimaginable cruelty. Cuts, bruises, burns, and scalds. Her body was covered in a 3 branded on her chest and disturbing words etched into her stomach. The official cause of death was a subdural hematoma from a blow to the temple, exacerbated by severe injuries and shock. The shocking discovery led to an immediate investigation. Jenny began to recite the rehearsed version of events as instructed by Gertrude before telling them, "You get me out of here, and I'll tell you everything." The investigation soon encompassed not just Gertrude Baniszewski, but her entire family and several local children. In the following months, a grand jury indicted Gertrude, her daughters Paula and Stephanie, her son John Jr., and 2 neighbors, Coy Hubbard and Richard Hobbs, for first-degree murder. The trial, which began in April 1966, revealed the full extent of Sylvia's suffering. Testimonies described how Gertrude and her children, along with the neighborhood kids, had subjected Sylvia to daily torture. She spent her final weeks in the basement, cut off from basic needs, while the community around her chose to ignore her plight. Gertrude Baniszewski, despite pleading insanity, was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. Her conviction was briefly overturned but was reaffirmed in a retrial in 1971. She was paroled in 1985 and died of lung cancer in 1990. This story makes one stop and stand still. I'd watched the movie An American Crime a few years back and recently revisited it. In tears, I sat, eyes widened, staring at the screen. I could barely wrap my head around how this could spiral out of control so badly. How was this allowed? How could an adult manage to not just abuse a child, but manage to involve other children as well, who seemed to take pleasure in this torture? These questions baffled me, and the answers still seem elusive. And then I was reminded.
Judges from Britain, America, Russia, and France assemble in Nuremberg's courthouse. Empowered to impose sentence of death, or such punishment as it may consider just, the tribunal sits in judgment upon 20 leaders of the Nazi Party.
I was reminded of the horrors of the Holocaust, how the SS officers managed to commit the crimes they committed. I remembered learning all this in my high school history class. I wondered, how? We learned what they said at the Nuremberg trials. They were just following orders. There is a need to draw a line between the leaders responsible and the people like me forced to serve as mere instruments in the hands of the leaders. I was not a responsible leader, and as such, do not feel myself guilty. This was coming from the man who played a crucial role in carrying out the final solution. Tasked with overseeing and organizing the large-scale deportation of Jews to ghettos and extermination camps in the German-occupied Eastern Territories. He was a key architect of the Holocaust. Yet, he claimed he was just following orders. Is this the fault of authority, or are some people just innately evil? In his final moments, Eichmann requested clemency, which was denied. He was executed 2 days later. Eichmann continued to justify his actions by insisting he and other lower-ranking officers were forced to be mere instruments. In July 1961, as Eichmann was on trial, psychologist Stanley Milgram set out to answer the question that everyone was asking. Could it be that Eichmann and his million accomplices in the Holocaust were just following orders? Could we call them all accomplices? So he decided to conduct an experiment which focused on the conflict between obedience to authority and personal conscience. To recruit participants, Milgram placed an advertisement in newspapers seeking male volunteers for a study on learning, which was a guise, to be conducted at Yale University. In the study, the participants were told they might be assigned as either a teacher or a learner, but in actuality, all participants were teachers and the learners were actors.
You're gonna get a shock, 180 volts.
I can't stand the pain. Let me out of here.
Can't stand it. I'm not gonna kill that man there. I mean, who's gonna take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman?
I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please.
All right, next one, slow. Walk, dance, truck, music.
Teachers were instructed to administer shocks of increasing intensity from 15 to 450 volts to the learner for incorrect answers. The learner's responses, including simulated pain and pleas, tested the teacher's willingness to obey. The results from the study were shocking. Despite discomfort, most of the participants continued to the highest shock level despite the learner's distress. Milgram had anticipated that Americans, known for their emphasis on individualism, would show greater resistance to authority compared to Germans when faced with the potential to harm others. Milgram and his team had predicted that only 1 to 3% of participants would administer the highest shock level. However, in the initial study, 65% were persuaded to deliver the maximum shock, and nearly 80% of those who continued past the 150 volts, the point at which the learner began to scream, proceeded to the full 450 volts. Despite their obedience, many of the teachers exhibited great distress, with some pleading with the experimenters to halt the procedure, all while continuing to administer shocks. One participant was so distressed that he wept when he learned that the learner had not been harmed. Does this surprise you? Imagine yourself in that position. Would you deliver the shock? Maybe this suggests more than a simple, "I was told to obey." Maybe it has more to do with trust. We often trust what we know. We know we wouldn't be fooled by our minds. We know those in charge are human, but they have the best interests in mind, right? Belief determines behavior. A bad authority figure might believe all trees should be eliminated. They don't think this is a bad opinion, but they know it's not a popular opinion. Trees to them harm humans. How? After all, trees provide oxygen, so how would you convince others to follow along? Well, they make it appetizing. Well, if we eliminated trees, I would give you all the property and raw materials you would want for your dreams. These trees are bad. They take up too much space. Humans have evolved to be at the top of the food chain, and society is built to thrive without them. We have other technology to provide oxygen anyway. This might sound ridiculous to our modern ears. After all, we need trees. Trees provide tremendous value, not just for the utilitarian value of simple oxygen it brings, but for the beauty of diversity it bestows upon our senses. Put in context of particular time periods, this devaluing doesn't sound that different from the oppression of the Jews or the chattel slavery brought upon Black people, or even the hate crimes committed against LGBTQ or transgender people. You might say, yes, but it still doesn't answer why some people are not only so easily fooled into these ideas, but continue to commit the acts they know in their heart is wrong. Well, this question can be answered in a study done by the Netherlands Institute for Neuroscience. In a similar fashion as Milgram's study, participants were assigned roles as either agents or victims. Agents who were in the MRI scanner had to decide between administering a mild shock to the victim for a small monetary gain or not giving the shock at all. Over 60 rounds, agents either made their own decisions or followed orders from the experimenter. This setup created a moral dilemma, choosing between personal gain and inflicting pain. The findings in this study, again, are quite shocking. The majority of participants never disobeyed an order to deliver a shock. When asked how guilty they felt administering these shocks, participants reported experiencing less guilt when following orders compared to when they were free to decide to deliver a shock. So it seems to be the case that obeying orders literally dulls feelings of empathy and guilt. So continuing to obey what we call immoral orders slowly makes someone feel less and less empathy. The question now is, how do these outliers or so-called moral rebels that don't obey exist in societies that reward blind obedience? What are these people made up of? Well, a study in 2013 explored this very topic. Participants were asked to write about a situation in which they would feel justified saying negative things about an overweight individual, despite knowing such comments violate social norms. This setup allowed researchers to observe participants' willingness to either conform to the request or uphold their moral values. Participants were asked to rate their role models and themselves on 12 moral traits representing character strengths. They assessed both their ideal self and their current self on these traits, and also rated themselves on 16 personality attributes related to how they interact with others and their self-perception. In addition to that, they also completed a moral rebel scale to measure their willingness to stand by their beliefs despite social pressure, and a social aggression scale to assess their tendency to limit others' expression. Not too surprisingly, the study revealed that those who resisted the task scored higher on the moral rebel scale and showed greater moral trait integration, indicating a strong alignment of their moral beliefs with their actions. Interestingly though, these moral rebels had lower self-esteem compared to those who complied, suggesting that high moral standards do not necessarily correlate with high self-regard. So all in all, what does this suggest? While many people generally yield to social pressures, it is possible to resist. However, this resistance may come with social costs, such as negative self-perception and peer disapproval. There is a slight difference between disobeying someone deemed as a higher authority and not giving in to peer pressure. The first is much harder to accomplish than the latter, but both are inextricably intertwined. Disobeying authority has social repercussions that can be long-lasting, and many people in the person's life will pressure them to conform to that authority, even if, looking back, we would view that authority as immoral, which is why the existence of people like moral rebels are so extremely important. Trust in the powers that be, along with a good dose of fear, often leaves us in a place of stagnation. Fear alone is a powerful driver, but if we continue to fear for what might happen, we would only be left with what is. And obviously, that's not always the best case, as history has shown us.